Hello, I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face to face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services. Hello and welcome to In Conversation With. I'm Kimberley Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and in today's episode, I'm joined by James Wallis, founder and chartered financial planner at Aristotle Financial Planning. Thank you for joining me today, James.
Hi, Kimberley. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So could you give us a bit of background into yourself and how you got started in financial services?
Yeah, sure. So I guess unlike everybody else who says that they kind of stumbled in by accident, I actually chose to come into financial services. The background to that is I was doing a business management degree at the university, and then I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And so then I thought the next best thing was to continue studying. So I went and did a master's degree in finance. And that's really where it kind of led me into financial services. And I was sort of encouraged to kind of go and explore different areas of finance and financial services. And then actually the one that appealed to me was financial advice, financial planning, because it kind of met the kind of two things that I enjoyed, which was talking and meeting new people and also using and applying the number side of things from a finance perspective. So fortunately, I was able to sort of take a graduate position with a regional firm, initially doing administration and then later power planning and then later advising. And I was there for 10 years before setting up my own business.
Wow. So what led you to consider starting your own firm?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where maybe some of the time the stars align and you kind of think, okay, like if you're not going to do it now, then maybe you should do it. But actually it was a combination of over a 12-month period. I personally got married and had my first child. And then secondly, the kind of firm that I was in was sold to a national consolidator. And I guess at that point you kind of think, okay, well, James, what are you really doing with your life here? Are you going to kind of continue to work in this firm and continue to just advise clients, or are you going to go and do something else? And I guess it probably sometimes helps with the backdrop of my parents were self-employed. They ran a retail business, a newsagent's business. So I wasn't really scared of being self-employed because I'd grown up with my parents being self-employed for 25, 30 years. So yeah, I guess the stars kind of aligned, and once you make a decision, you kind of have to stick to it and go with it.
Yeah, no, I think it is probably a little bit easier when you have that familial backing of knowing that, oh, they were capable of doing it and they probably can advise you. I mean, they're not going to be able to be like, this is how you start a financial advice firm, but they can advise you on running your own business. And most people don't have that. So I can imagine that's a nice place to be.
Exactly right, Kimberley. And I guess there is some kind of, I did read a book a couple of years ago, and there is a very high statistic of the numbers of people who go and set their own business up and become self-employed with having had self-employed or business owning parents is very high. And actually people who have parents who are employed, the kind of rate at which they become self-employed or start businesses is much lower. So I guess there is some kind of nurture behind that, as far as people, and certainly my situation, I wasn't scared by it. Yeah, I kind of understood some of the risks, and was thankfully able to talk to my parents about, okay, these are some of the things you need to think of from a business perspective, not just from a financial advice and seeing clients perspective.
Yeah. So you are one of the incubees, as Haley likes to refer to you, from the Verve Foundation's advisor Incubator. So what were your expectations leading up to going into it, and were they met? And also, did you have any apprehension when you were going into it as well?
Yeah, so apprehension, yes. I think it's a really structured course, which is great, and a program which is great, but it is quite a time commitment. So, it's a kind of a couple of hours every week for 12 weeks. And so that was kind of my apprehension is, okay, I'm going to commit my time here, but am I going to be able to do anything in between those sessions to actually kind of make it productive? And I guess, thankfully, the answer to that was yes, it was. And in terms of kind of why I decided, I mean, I had sort of become an incubee, as Hayley likes to call it, probably, a couple of years into starting the business. So it wasn't kind of for me, help to actually build the very basics of what a business is. It was actually more a case of you need to review what you've got and what you've actually set up. Because actually, when you're running a business, your head's very much in the business all the time. And sometimes it's hard to take a step back and think about everything in its entirety, rather than just thinking about, let's say, the marketing, or just thinking about certain documents, or just thinking about certain things. So it's kind of a case of the hope was that it would give me the ability and the structure to kind of actually review everything properly.
Mm-hmm. And could you describe the specific aha moment when you realized entrepreneurship was the right path for you? I know you said that you come from a background where, your family has been entrepreneurs, but what made you think I'm also capable of being an entrepreneur? I can do this in my specific field.
Yeah, I think when you kind of start thinking about it, and then you start talking about it to others, and then other people come back to you and say, yes, of course you can do that. Yes, you should definitely do that. Why shouldn't you do that? Then you kind of think, yeah, okay, actually, maybe I sort of could do that. I think the reality is, Kimberley, is that probably for the first kind of, 6 to 12 months of running a business, there's very much kind of elements of feeling like an imposter a lot of the time. So I've been an advisor for a long period of time, so understood how to work with clients, how to give advice, how to undertake financial planning. But actually running a business is like a total different skill set from that perspective. And I think there was lots of occasions during the first kind of 6-12 months where I felt like, you're out of your comfort zone here. You don't necessarily really know what you're doing. And I think it's only really after kind of 12 months where you kind of think, okay, I'm now okay being out of my comfort zone. That's probably the moments where you think, actually, yeah, I can run a business here. It doesn't just have to be constantly feeling like you're an imposter and winging it the whole time.
Yeah. The only way I can relate to this is when I was doing my master's, it was in publishing, and I'd written for my final project business plan, and my mentor was like, you should do this. You can do this. At the time, I was 25, and I was just like, no, this was just a fun little project so that I could get a good grade. I can't seriously think of doing this. Again, I don't have parents. I have parents who've always been in employment. So that wasn't really something that I could get that support from them, but they were also like, no, Kim, you can totally do this. But then I think what I lacked was confidence in myself to be able to do the follow through. And looking back now, I'm like, yeah, definitely 25-year-old me would not have been able to handle running her own or setting up her own publishing business. It might have been way too much. But at the same time, I look back and I think that would have been such a cool challenge, whether I failed or whatever. I think I would have learned something from it and been able to, build from that. So I don't know if that is also a good takeaway of that. Yeah, you might fail, but it's a good learning experience, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess in the financial service industry, a lot of people are encouraged to be business owners and encourage entrepreneurship, and we often work with business owners, but actually sometimes it can just be just as brave a decision to sort of say no to things and to say, I'm not going to go down and explore that avenue and explore that thing, and that can be really brave too. And I think I'm sat here as a business owner, which is great, and it suits me, and like I say, maybe some of that nurture behind me, but it doesn't have to be for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you actually discover the Verve Foundation's Advisor Incubator? And what made you choose the program, even knowing, it was such a big time consideration as well?
Yeah, so I think I had followed the Verve group generally on kind of social media, particularly LinkedIn, and had sort of seen that pop up a few times and think, oh, that looks quite interesting. I wonder if that would be useful for me. And then I actually, as it happens over time, I think one of the first cohorts, a friend in the industry had been an incubator. And then I saw a kind of testimonial from them about how useful it had been. And so then I contacted them and sort of said, okay, do you think this would be useful for me? Do you think I would get value from this? Would there be benefit to this? And they were kind of, yes, you should definitely go ahead and do it. I think you'll get some value from it. And that was really what led me to kind of getting in contact with the Verve Foundation to kind of actually join one of the cohorts.
Yeah. And could you share some specific examples of how the incubator's mentoring, training, or community helped you overcome challenges and achieve your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I would particularly say the mentoring was kind of fantastic. So actually, we had these kind of 12 sessions on a weekly basis, but then there was kind of 5 or 6 mentoring sessions and you're partnered up with a mentor. And actually, sometimes just being able to verbalize things in you that are going on in your head and thinking things through and just being able to talk and get clarity of decisions was really useful. So, things that often come up, particularly the ones that kind of came up in this kind of period, was one about whether to move office or not. So I'd sort of taken a small office to kind of get up and started, but, kind of felt like, okay, maybe you could move and go to somewhere more established because I'm in a serviced office at the moment. And actually talking that through and having clarity about, you don't actually need to do that if you don't want to do that. And, you don't have to do that now. And then the kind of second thing is actually reviewing investment proposition. So actually at the moment was previously kind of managing that in-house. And I guess that makes sense from a finance perspective for me, being comfortable doing that. But as you grow the business, your time gets more constrained and you kind of go, okay, well, where's the value to the clients? The value to the clients is really James sitting doing financial planning with clients, not necessarily focusing quite a lot of time on the investment proposition. So maybe you should think about outsourcing that, whether that just be to a third party or whether that be to sort of a full discretionary proposition. So that was probably the key thing that kind of helped me kind of that, because that had been in my head for a year. Going backwards and forwards, and sometimes you just need to talk it through and have clarity.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I've experienced things where I've been working on something, solo, and then I have someone else like look over what I'm doing, or I talk to them about what I'm doing, and they're able to look at it from basically kind of a bird's eye view and go, this would be much simpler if you just did it this way. And you're like, oh, yeah. I never considered that, or I had considered that, but I just put it off.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's like you say, it's having someone else look at things in a different perspective, and it's not necessarily what you're doing is broken or wrong, but it's just, is there like a better way to do it for you either now or also, in the future? And I think that was definitely what helped me.
Yeah. And what were the most valuable resources or tools provided by the incubator that you found instrumental in your journey? You've mentioned the mentoring. Was there anything else?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were several sessions with kind of experts on specific areas, which was kind of really good. So there was a specific section about kind of compliance and regulation, to kind of have a think about that and kind of how your business is structured from a regulatory perspective. There was another session about proposition, another session about working with what you would consider to be, I guess, lower value clients or clients who are just earlier in the journey. Can you find a way to have some kind of proposition to kind of think about that and fit that from that perspective, separate to your full financial planning proposition. So yeah, there was lots of individual sessions from experts which were kind of useful, and I'm not sure that you necessarily would have got that without being part of the program. Because I think it's hard to kind of get time with those specific people on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, you probably have to hunt down like
individual webinars yourself and have to stay on top of that. But being in this, succinct 12-week program allows you to get all that information in one place, which is helpful.
Yeah, exactly right. And sometimes it was a case of, well, what you're doing is okay, and you don't need to kind of worry about that or go away and do that. And that's sometimes reassuring. And then other times it was, yeah, you probably should go off and explore that in a bit more detail, James, or put that to your kind of business planning focus for the next kind of few weeks.
Yeah. And I wonder if there are any significant hurdles that you faced during the early stages of starting your firm, and did the incubator support you in helping you like iron out those kinks, or were you already in the process of ironing them out? What's the process?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of significant hurdles starting a business, I think it's one, the volume of decisions that you need to make is actually really high when you're starting a business. It's like a blessing and a curse. Sometimes like making all those decisions is great because you can, but then other times you can sort of become a bit overwhelmed by having to make all those decisions.
Yeah.
And so I think actually having a bit of help of, these are the decisions that you actually need to make, and these are the decisions that would be nice to think about, but not necessarily essential, and you can come back to them down the line. That was really helpful for me in terms of giving clarity from that perspective.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned, the first 12 months of feeling a little bit like an imposter, having that imposter syndrome. But I'm sure you've seen a transformation in yourself. So what has been the most outlined personal and professional transformation that you've noticed as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two things there that I would say, Kim. So I think one is when you're running a business, it's much harder to switch off on a kind of your personal life to your work life. You kind of don't sometimes have that ability to just kind of switch off, turn the laptop off and forget about everything.
Yeah.
And so that can be quite challenging to kind of, how do you work through that? How do you navigate that? So I think that's a really kind of big challenge from that perspective. But then, equally, I think I just said that, you have to make lots of decisions as a business owner. I think actually being more comfortable with making decisions and actually being comfortable with making decisions that end up sometimes being the wrong thing is probably what I've learned over the first kind of couple of years of running a business, that, it's really a case of, if you make more right decisions than wrong decisions, then you're going kind of the right way as a business. Obviously with clients, that's different. You need to make the right decisions all of the time, which is, fine. And that's kind of what we get paid to do. And that's obviously what we do on a day-to-day basis. But from a business perspective, it is being comfortable with making more decisions and being okay with some of them not being quite right.
I wonder if it's difficult, with the whole, in terms of like switching off, with the whole like hustle culture mentality where people are like, I only sleep 4 hours a day because I'm waking up and doing all this. Yeah. Is there that element of feeling like other business owners are doing this, so I feel like I should also, basically have no life outside of my business? So whereas other people are able to just be like, oh, it's 9 a.m. I'm going to start work. Oh, it's 5. Goodbye, work. Is there that element of like feeling like I need to hustle or something?
Yeah, I definitely think to start with, because, to start with, I guess you're really just self-employed. You don't have a business until you're a little bit more kind of established. So I think there's definitely elements of that. But also I think wanting to progress and move things forwards kind of means that that's sometimes what stops you from kind of switching off. Sometimes you kind of go, okay, well, I've been, or I've got halfway through this project, but then I need to kind of, I can't just keep going on and on and on. But yeah, there's definitely elements of the hustle culture. Now, actually, in the background, I have 3 young children. So I sometimes get physically pulled away to go and do things
good for
with
them.
the children. So you actually that's a really good thing, because it means that you kind of forced to stop thinking about that, and it does mean that over the past couple of years there've been times when I have young children, they don't necessarily sleep through the night okay, and you're really tired and you're getting up at 4 a.m. 5 a.m. just whatever. So you can't realistically physically work 60, 70, 80 hours, like the perception is like that a business kind of owner needs to be. And but then sometimes that causes some conflict, that you kind of feel like I'm not working enough, but I can't do anything about it either.
Yeah, no, I can imagine when it feels like everything's on your shoulders, it's quite a lot. But I'm hoping that you found that balance now.
Yeah, I think over time it gets easier, and you also kind of find techniques, if you kind of want to call it that, to kind of switch off. So, actually maybe taking more frequent holidays as opposed to kind of storing up your kind of, because you don't have a holiday allowance when you run a business or you're self-employed, but actually sometimes that means not taking any holiday at all, and actually making sure that you are switching off properly and taking time away. And for me, that only really works if I actually go somewhere away, because I know that if I'm just at home for the day, the laptop will come out and I'll start kind of doing things. So actually there's kind of techniques that you develop over time. And, actually a couple of years ago, my wife bought just a little wooden box, and it's called Daddy's Phone Box. And actually when you sort of come in and you kind of think, okay, like I need to be present here, is actually go and put the phone in the box. And then out of sight, out of mind, you're not going to know whether someone's texted you or called you or there's been an email come in, because the phone's not with you, and that kind of helps sometimes. So I think it's the case of picking up some of those things and what works for you, because like some people are more disciplined with their phone than others, and with their time than others too.
That's so true. So now looking forward, what are your aspirations for the future of your firm, and how has the Incubator experience shaped your long-term vision?
Yeah, so I think aspirations is to just build a really great firm and deliver really great financial planning to clients. And actually what the kind of Incubator program has kind of made me think is actually not necessary to maybe think a bit bigger. Now, I'm not saying that I want to grow a big national firm, but I guess, when you start a business, you kind of have these kind of numbers to kind of go to, and you kind of think, okay, if I get to here, then that's going to be fine, and I'll be okay. But actually, as you start to grow the business and you get more clients, you kind of think, okay, well, I'm going to get constrained here. Maybe I should grow the business a little bit more and welcome other people into the business in terms of employees and maybe other advisors and things like that. So actually, that's maybe shifted my thinking a little bit, of instead of just being a nice but well-run business for James and James's clients, to actually think a little bit bigger in terms of scale of, okay, maybe we'll sort of think about that over the next kind of 10 years, and maybe we can help more families than just the number of families that James can help.
Yeah. And I've been meaning to ask this since the beginning, actually, but what was the inspiration behind calling your firm Aristotle Financial Planning? Are you a philosophy nerd?
I wouldn't say a nerd. I think I do, have read philosophy books and, interested in kind of the Stoics generally, I think, and sort of some of the things that you can learn from that. In terms of naming the business, that's always like really difficult to kind of do. And I think I was conscious to not want to just call it like James Wallis Financial Advice. And there's nothing wrong with that from that perspective, but I just didn't want to do that. And so you kind of look and you kind of go, okay, well, what are the things that we're trying to look at? What are we trying to do? Well, actually, we're trying to use our kind of wisdom and logic to kind of help people with their finances and move them forwards. And actually, there's a concept there which is called eudaimonia, which is about real fulfillment and happiness. And that's really kind of was founded by Aristotle, along with the sort of original concepts of wisdom and logic. And so it kind of became a natural thing to kind of go, okay, well, why don't we call it Aristotle Financial Planning, and, call it after Aristotle with the wisdom and logic, and call it what it is on the tin, financial planning. And that's kind of where it sort of comes together. And once you go with it, you can't change your mind. So we're with it now.
No, I love it. As a self-professed philosophy nerd, I was like, that name really stands out. And I think even without knowing too much about Aristotle and his philosophies, I think you can still think, oh, that's an interesting name, and look more into that. Also, just in terms of like SEO clicks and stuff like that, I think I would definitely be like, oh, this is an interesting firm to click on, if I was looking for advisors. But finally, what advice would you give to other financial advisors who are contemplating starting their own firms or considering joining an incubator program like the Verve Foundation's one?
Yeah, I think from joining the incubator program, I think I would definitely advocate for it. I think it's going to help you, give you some structure, some clarity, some thoughts around things. And I think actually the structure of the weekly program, as well as the community of people that you'll meet that are on a like-minded basis, will really help you from that perspective. I've met people that in the kind of on the program that I am still in touch with and still kind of make contact with, and kind of how things going, those sorts of things, and also like challenges, problems. In terms of running a business, I think, like I say, it's easy for me to sit here and just say like, okay, yeah, just go and do it. Like there's nothing kind of holding you back. Like thankfully, I guess there aren't massive barriers to entry in the financial advice sector. Of you could just go and set a business up and that's fine. And I know that there's that regulatory permissions that you kind of need to deal with around that, but it's relatively low cost to go and start a business. You don't have to go and buy lots of plant and machinery and equipment that you might have to do if you're starting an engineering firm, for example. But I would sort of say think long term about what actually what is it that I am wanting to do if I do run a business. Is it that I just want to have a bit more freedom, or is it that I actually want to build something that's a different entity from that perspective? Because I think actually it's not necessarily the right thing for everybody to just jump in and go ahead and do it, because it isn't necessarily the right time, and there isn't always necessarily going to be a right time for anybody to start a business. But there's some times that are better than others, and so thinking about that timing, thinking about whether that's really for me, and is it just about freedom of job, or is it I want to do things in a different way and make my mark and put my stamp on things? Because there's a difference between the two things. It could just be you're not necessarily in the right firm, or it could be you actually do want to kind of do things a different way or put your own stamp on it. In that case, maybe you should go for it and start your own firm, because why not? Give it a go.
Yeah, I think that is all very valid advice, and I hope that everyone finds it useful. But thank you so much for speaking with me today, James. This is a really great conversation.
No problem at all. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.